Hello everyone, welcome back to a enormously special episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. What a massive milestone we have hit this week, Jeannine. Look at it. It's episode 300 of the main show. Over 300 new old movies. Well, whether they're new old movies or old movies we loved anyway, basically the point is that it is over 300 wonderful old movies celebrated on this show in now over 6 years of It's a Wonderful Podcast, which is an incredible length of time.
Yes.
300 episodes is an incredible amount of episodes. I did not quite ever think we'd get so far. But then why didn't I think that? Why didn't I wish that this show would go on and on and on? It makes me enormously proud that we've hit this particular milestone because of how small this show is to me from when it began, started as something I very much needed at that time. I needed to delve my energy into something like this, celebrating something I love, because it brought me a small amount of joy and happiness at what was perhaps not the most joyful and happy time, which is why this show will always and forever hold a dear special place in my heart, even if it goes on for the rest of my life, which I'll be honest with you, I kind of hope in one way or another it does.
Yes.
I really do.
Yeah.
There's few things, if anything, I love doing more than It's a Wonderful Podcast. And to start us off, I mean, hello and welcome back to an episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Of course, you are not treating yourself fully enough if you are not watching this episode either. It is, of course, on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel as well. You may already be here watching this episode, this special episode of the main show. But if you are just listening, wherever you do get your podcasts, of course, the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed on all major podcast platforms, then, go on over to It's a Wonderful Podcast on YouTube as well. Subscribe, ding your notification bells over there or over here if you're already here, and get the full benefit of today's milestone special. But yes, I will stop prattling on. Begin your celebration of the show.
Yes, I mean, I was not here as a co-host from the very beginning, but I did have a part in the beginnings of the show. I remember when you asked me to design a podcast, a logo for this podcast that you were starting. And, I fell in love with the title. I thought it was such a fun idea. Obviously, a nod to It's a Wonderful Life. And so I even tried to incorporate that into the design. I remember really scanning that poster on things I could use. And so I tried to replicate the text in that poster, that original poster where he's lifting up Donna Reed, because there are a few different posters. And use that font and kind of design the font in that style. So I wanted to incorporate that, and then the old school microphone. And so I remember having a lot of fun, you and Dean in top hats. So I really had fun trying to kind of come up with the idea for that logo, and it ended up being one of my favorites that I've created. And then it was really fun incorporating kind of a avatar of myself into the logo once I became part of the show. So if you see my little display here, it's displaying Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because that was my very first appearance on It's a Wonderful Podcast. It was a really fun episode with you, me, and our friend Brandon Hanna talking about this really ridiculous movie that we love. And again, as I talked about on our 250 of Morgan Hasn't Seen, my auto quality audio quality was not good. That first episode, I think I was using headphones because I was just not equipped at that time to be a podcaster. But you made me a podcaster, and I've loved doing this show. I remember really early on, I grew up with a handful of classic films that my mom had showed me when we would do movie nights as a kid. And so I, shared that tiny little nugget of what I knew about classics with you. And in those early episodes, you actually did quite a few films that I had suggested to you. So I was happy to even be in a small way a part of discovering some classic films that were new to you. But in doing the show myself, I really grew a huge passion for this era of film and have loved all of the films we've discovered and seen over the years. And I love the work that we do here in bringing that to other people and advocating for these films and letting them not be forgotten and just sharing these hidden gems and really reminding people that they would not have cinema and movies that they have today without the groundwork of this era of film. So I've
Yeah.
loved doing the show. My first episode, where it was just you and me, I believe, was episode somewhere in the 70s, I think.
Well, I
Um,
don't know the episode numbers
my
specifically.
first solo episode with you and me was episode 54. So my first ever episode was episode 47, Willy Wonka, You, Me, and Brandon Hannah. My
Okay.
first solo episode where I guested just you and me was episode 54, talking bed knobs and broomsticks. So
Oh,
I love that that was
delightful.
like my first episode being, just a,
Yes.
a solo guest host. And my first official episode as an official co host of It's a Wonderful Podcast was episode 76, talking The Haunting. So,
Oh, interesting, interesting.
yes.
I
Yes.
do kind of love that your first solo episode with just the two of us was Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, a movie that does mean a great deal to me
Yeah.
anyway, and now has another layer to its meaning to me,
Yes.
given that it was our real first time being co-hosts of this show
Yeah.
together. But you have mentioned a couple of people there who
Yeah.
deserve a massive mention at the beginning of this, and we'll get into all the celebration we have today.
Yes,
And let's be clear here as well. It is all three based. It is all based around threes.
of
This is
course.
episode 300. We love the number three here. Jeannine, why on earth is this whole show based around things coming in threes?
Because 3 is the magic number, and it's
Yes. Say
300, so
and it's
we had to,
300.
yeah. Yes.
Jeannine, of
But yeah.
course, likes to sing that at the end of every single episode of the
Yes,
show.
of course. But yes, you mentioned some great guest hosts that we've had throughout the years. And so I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate them because they were a part of this show and part of,
Yeah,
how we got here. And so I just
massive.
wanted to, yeah, so I wanted to talk about some of those people.
Wouldn't have got through some times without these people, and
Yes.
you can include yourself on this list at the very beginning, but definitely, there was times when Dean wouldn't be able to do
Mhm.
shows for quite an extended period of time, and these people helped massively in keeping this show alive. It wouldn't have gotten anywhere near. I would have likely stopped the show and fallen off,
Yeah.
of doing it had it not been for the help, support, and wonderful guest co-hostship of these people.
Yes, and I would like to just also say, I think we've stepped away from guests, not because we don't want guests. It's just because, we've taken on so much, we've grown so much in terms of doing more shows and now having a YouTube channel and doing things on other platforms that, our recording schedule is so crazy considering,
Yeah.
alone our 8-hour time difference. So it's kind of difficult to get guests just because we record at such weird random times, because we have other shows now and other things kind of going on on building the channel, that it's not like how it was back then when this was kind of the
No.
only show that was, or we just had this and Morgan hasn't seen. And really, so it was easier to kind of curate getting a guest on to record and things like that. So we would love to one day get back to having guests come on for special episodes of the podcast. Definitely a goal to figure out going down the line. But so I just wanted to celebrate this wonderful era of having guest hosts on the show, including myself.
Yes.
So, just to
Yes.
celebrate some really great people who have made their way through the doors of It's a Wonderful Podcast. The very first guest on It's a Wonderful Podcast was our good friend Brandon Hanna. He appeared
Yes,
on
he was.
episode 24 talking the Wolfman. It was you and him doing a great episode. He loves classic monster movies, so he was a great guest to have on for that episode, and proud to have such a good friend be the very first guest co-host on the show. Second guest host we ever had was another good friend, Kimber
Yes.
Bennis, who was Barrett at the time, but now is Bennis because so much time has passed since we've known these
A lot
wonderful
of time.
people. Yes. And that was episode 26, talking the House of Usher. I think you and her have bonded over a love for, classic horror, particularly things with the wonderful Vincent Price. So I've loved seeing you guys kind of have that bond for this era of horror films for sure. A very frequent guest host that appeared on the show several times was Rachel Silvestrini. She appeared on episode
Yes.
46, Talking Singing in the Rain, episode 48 for The Wizard of Oz, episode 49 for Paint Your Wagon, episode 63, The Court Jester, and episode 70 for Disney's Cinderella. So she definitely
Yes.
stepped in and talked a lot of episodes with you, or lots of shows with you. So yeah, thank you, Rachel, for being a part of the legacy of It's a Wonderful Podcast.
Absolutely.
And I made quite a few guest appearances. As I mentioned, my first was episode 47, Willy Wonka. My first solo episode with you, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, episode 54. And then when I came on to be a frequent guest host that summer that Dean was away, I brought in my own little idea for the show called Deja Vu, where we would take a look at a classic film and then kind of do a comparative conversation about its modern remake. So it was kind of my way of putting a stamp on the show in terms of bringing what I knew about modern film and what you knew about classic film kind of together. And I didn't know at the time that I would end up being an official co-host of this show, but I thought while I'm here I want to use my time to kind of add something creative to the show if I can, and you allowed me to really put my little stamp on it, even if it was going to be for just a short time. So
Yeah.
um I started the Deja Vu series talking The Lion in Winter. We didn't actually watch the remake, but we, kind of looked into it and talked about it in comparison to the original classic film. So that was episode 61. I think it wasn't until The Bishop's Wife, episode 62, where we really had fun looking at that version of the film and compared it to The Preacher's Wife, the modern version. So this idea kind of ended up coming into full swing. Although the next week we talked Laura, which was for me the first, I think, film that we discussed that was really showing me what this show does. This great discovery of
Okay.
films that maybe people don't know about, a hidden gem type movie, because I had no idea, what this movie was. Um, you know, discovering actors that I hadn't really seen in this vein, or even actors that were new to me in general. So Laura was the first film for me where it was that bit of discovery that really got me excited about what this show could do in terms of bringing these classic films to, a wider audience. And then the deja vu continues as we talked Sabrina from episode 67, episode 69, Phantom of the Opera, episode 71, The Little
Yes.
Princess, episode 72, the Friedrich March version of Jekyll and Hyde, episode
Yes.
73, Born Yesterday, and then we got into episode 74, M. That was a great
Oh,
movie to discover for me. I had heard of it. I knew kind of the significance of that film. So to finally get to watch it again, just this great moment of discovery for me on the show. And then obviously my first official episode with The Haunting, which was also a deja vu. And
yeah.
then we did a great episode, you, me, and Kimber talking House on Haunted Hill for episode 78. So that was a really fun episode having the three of us talk about this movie because this was a movie that you both loved. I obviously am from a specific era, so I was very familiar with the late 90s 2000s remake version of the movie. So getting to go back and watch this movie with the two of you who loved it, Vincent Price, and we had a lot of fun on that episode. And then just three more guest hosts that we had on the show. James White, he came on for episode 64 talking Double Indemnity. So a really great
Yes,
one that you guys discussed
a,
there.
a monstrously significant movie that James White managed to grab
Yeah, right?
on the show. I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah. He got lucky with that. It's a good one. And then of course we had Ashley Davis, episode 66, talking Night of the Living Dead, also getting a really good pick for her
Oh yeah,
episode. So thank you, Ashley. We love you. And her husband Joe Davis came on episode 68 to talk My Fair Lady. So we've had some
yes,
great guest talks, some really big popular classic films for sure. So thank you to our amazing guest hosts who have been a part of the history of this show. Uh, Really fun to have you, and hopefully we can get back to that era of guests one day. But this was a great time for the show, for sure.
yes, and obviously an enormous thank you to all of those delightful, wonderful people, but an even bigger thank you, really, to Dean Byrne, the artist formerly known
Yes.
as we like to call him,
Yeah.
who without whom the show wouldn't exist.
Yes. Yes.
He has since left the show quite a long time ago now,
Yeah.
but was there at the beginning. He's still on the logo. He's still
Yes,
there
he's
on
always
the
a
logo
part of the show.
perfectly
Yes, you
fine.
started the show with him. I remember listening to that very first episode of the show, and loved kind of you guys having this very different mindset, different kind of demeanor on the show, made for some really interesting conversations. And yeah, he will always be a part of this podcast. And, we're really proud of everything he's been doing,
Oh,
killing it with stand up.
massively.
So proud and excited for him and what he has going on. But yeah, just always going to be a part of the show, whether he's here or
He,
not. And you know,
he's taken leaps and bounds since leaving the show, so
yeah,
we can't say fairer than that. But yes,
yes,
an even more special, enormous thank you to Dean Byrne, of
yes,
course. But let's actually get into the three-based discussions of today's celebratory episode, Jeannine, because we actually have 5 different little segments to
yes,
talk about today. Each of us has chosen 3 defining actors of It's a Wonderful Podcast, 3 defining actresses of It's a Wonderful Podcast, 3 defining genres and styles of the show, 3 defining singular movies from It's a Wonderful Podcast history, and we have one rather fun switch up of something as well, because as I often like to do, is add people to the Mustache Hall of Fame. Jeannine has actually come up with her 3 defining mustaches. And
yes.
as Jeannine has more frequently these days liked to do herself on episodes of the show and add to her old Hollywood crush list, I've come up with my 3 defining crushes of the show. So we've had a bit of a fun little switch up there.
Yes.
But I think we just get straight on into the excitement,
Okay.
Jeannine. I really do now. Thanks and celebration over, but not celebration over because conversation begins. And
Yes.
as we start, I think, with our three defining actors,
Yes.
I have a very interesting way I did this. I'd like to just say I have in front of me a notepad where I went through each and every episode, not listened to, obviously, that would have taken me about 8 years, but
Yes.
I've been through each and every episode, and I have an enormous tally chart in front of me.
Oh, I thought about doing that, but I was like, "This is gonna it'd be difficult to, like, go through everything." But I just kind
It
of went
wasn't
off. My
easy.
memory went through looking at the episodes and kind of just thought about the actors that made an impact on me. I try to have a diversity of an actor who is very much who you think of when you think of classic films, an actor who I think is very versatile and just an incredible actor. Um, Somebody who impressed me and surprised me, which reminds me of what the show does, somebody that I just was not expecting, someone I had never heard of that really made an impact, and a great supporting actor, because that's also kind of a discovery for people that doesn't really get a lot of attention or love when thinking about this era of film. And then there were so many that I just also had to throw an honorable mention in there as
Well,
well, so
there's a ridiculous amount, and I think this is what's great about when we do special milestone episodes like
yeah.
this is we each bring our own meanings, our own interpretations to the discussions we bring forward, like three defining actors of
Yes.
this show's history. What does defining this show mean to you? It means
Yes.
something different to you than it might mean to me, which is
Yeah.
perhaps why I've done this ridiculous tally chart, and you've gone off vibes, which is a perfect way of doing it. I feel like that would usually be what I do, but
Yes, yes.
I
No.
tried to do something a bit different today. Perhaps all of my three choices might not just be based on these stats, though. I kind of want to speak a little bit about some of these stats because I find them
Okay.
fascinating. But
Okay.
but we'll start off with Jeannine. Who are your three defining
Okay.
actors of It's a
Well
Wonderful Podcast?
well, my honorable mention it was very difficult to not add him to the 3 because he's so great. But my honorable mention is Charles Laughton. Um,
Oh, okay, okay.
we did one film of his, Witness for the Prosecution, and I just absolutely loved his style, his character, his sense of comedy, but, still, intelligence and competence in this role, that we ended up kind of going on this Charles Laughton run and talked several more of his films where, again, he showed so much diversity in his characters and his performances. And then we also did the one film he directed as well, which was just a shame to discover that that was the one and only film he'd made, A Night of the Hunter. Such a great, thrilling, very much dancing the line of horror, dark film that he made with that. So, just a very impressive actor that was new to me, and loved celebrating him. And really spoke to what we do on the show, just highlighting actors that people don't really think of. But my list of
Okay,
3.
okay. So no.
Okay,
Quick thing
okay.
about Charles Laughton. How many Charles Laughton movies? I mean, movies he has appeared in. Do you think we have done on the show? Actually, it's also quite interesting that Charles Laughton is the only single person we've ever just decided to do a whole series on based on vibes.
Wow,
Literally based
okay.
on we loved Charles Laughton in Witness for the Prosecution, so we just decided to keep the train going. We've never ever done that with anybody else. So absolutely, he
Yes.
deserves that vastly honourable mention. But just a quick guess. You don't have to think too
Um,
long about it, but how many
I
movies do you
think,
think?
including Night of the Hunter that he directed, I would say
Well, I
5?
haven't included that, but okay.
Okay,
We're
well,
on to
4
6.
films. Oh, okay. Okay. 'cause I'm like
Big
Hobson's
child.
Choice, Witness for the Prosecution, Mutiny on the Bounty, The Big Clock, and then I was thinking of Night of the Hunter.
The Old Dark House and Spartacus are the other.
Oh, yes. Okay, okay.
Go plenty more Charles Lawton, I'm sure, to come on this show. But yes,
Yes.
give me quickly your three big ones, and
Okay,
we'll
so
this discussion.
my 3, actors that I feel like define what It's a Wonderful Podcast is all about is Victor Mature, George
Ooh,
Sanders, and it was very hard to pick between this man and the man behind you, Cary Grant, but I went with the father of our channel, Jimmy Stewart.
Jeannine, stunning choices, stunning choice. I particularly appreciate the decision to pick Victor Mature, given that I didn't even bother putting him on my
'Cause
tally list.
he literally only has one single movie that we talked about on this channel, but eh, watching that movie and seeing his performance was such a revelation for me. I
And this was
absolutely
Kiss of Death, wasn't it? This
yes,
was Kiss of
yes.
Death.
So just seeing his performance and being like, "Who is this guy? Why have I not heard of him? Why is he not more widely talked about in this era of film?" He was brilliant. And so him just being this great nugget of a discovery for me in terms of this one singular performance just spoke to everything that I love that I discover from the show and what we try to put out to people. Because I feel like we are a very specific type of show that not a lot of people do. I think a lot of people talk about movies on their podcasts, but I think we are the one podcast that really gives love to this era and really tries to show people movies that aren't being talked about. And so in seeing this performance just spoke to all of the things that we try to do in the show in just the discovery of great actors and films and filmmakers. And so his performance in Kiss of Death was just such a great surprise and excited me in a way that, him in that film really encompassed so much about It's a Wonderful Podcast. So I had to put him on the list.
I love this so much. You're absolutely right, by the way, because you can go and look at other old movie shows. Nobody does what we do like we do.
No.
Nobody. And this is something I've grown to become much more proud of what we do for, because there's enough old Hollywood podcasts out there, but absolutely nobody talks with this frequency of enthusiasm about the types of movies we talk about. So if you
Yes.
really want to get into old Hollywood and all of its fun little interesting areas, we're not experts. We never
No.
pretend to be experts. We are amateur film historians. We are
Yeah.
constantly discovering new areas and constantly celebrating these times in movies, the people that those times gave us, the struggles they went through to get the legacy they have now
Yeah.
at times, as well as just the great lives some of them did lead. But I love the choice of Victor Mature. You've also gone with Jimmy Stewart, who is very close to topping our tally list.
Wow.
He
Yes.
comes in at joint second place for amount of movies he has
Okay.
with a starring Jimmy Stewart role. How many do you think that is?
Ooh, I'd
Quick,
say
quick
the
guesses.
13?
We're on 10 Jimmy Stewart
Okay.
movies
Okay.
with a
Okay.
starring role. Which, 300 movies, 10 Jimmy, it might seem like a small amount, but it isn't real
That's a
when you think
lot.
of the vastness
No.
of the
Yes.
movies.
I wanted to pick somebody who encompasses, what I think the average person thinks of when they think of a classic films actor, which obviously is a big, part of this show. So, uh it was gonna be him or Carrie, for sure,
Okay.
because they have been huge parts of this show. They are kind of the template of what one thinks of when they think of classic movies and the classic movie star, actor.
Yeah.
He's, his film is the namesake for our show, so that's, I think, why he maybe won out. But he's also an actor who has shown incredible versatility. He can be a bit of kind of a skeezy dark villain. His One of his films was the very first episode of this podcast as well.
Yes, it was.
Vertigo was the very first film, and I remember listening to that episode as a fan of this show before being a co-host. Um, that I actually watched Vertigo for the first time to prepare for listening to that episode. So, um, yeah, I mean, as before I got really into classic films from this show, he was what I thought of when I thought of a classic films actor. So I really wanted to pick somebody who spoke to that, who spoke to kind of the glamour of the era, but who also was an incredible actor with a great amount of versatility in their filmography. He's played the down and out guy, the noble, never quitting kind of guy. He's played the kind of deplorable character in something like Vertigo. He's played the hero. He's done several different genres. He was great at comedy, but also just as good at drama. His early career, it was great seeing him in the Thin Man movies to play like this early villain. It was such a fun surprise
Yes.
seeing him. So just somebody who encompasses classic films as a whole, who has made a stamp for a reason, who is known by people who know nothing about classic films for a reason. So he's just a staple actor of the era, of the genres he's done, and kind of just the father of our podcast. So
I love the choice. I really love the choice. And the third was who again?
And George Sanders, of course.
George Sanders. Now, how
And
many
so,
George Sanders movies do you think?
ooh, I'd say like I'd say 5.
Well, he's the exact same as Lawton. He's 6. He's on 6.
6. Okay, okay. Um, and I wanted to pick one great supporting actor who, I think you are aware of his magnificent voice. If you didn't know, he was in The Jungle Book. Shere Khan, great,
Yes.
great voice. And so the first time I saw him, I was watching All About Eve on a plane, and just fell in love with his performance as kind of this shady side character who's kind of manipulating things on the side. He also has this really great androgyny about him. You
He
know, he
does.
he
For,
has
for,
this, yeah, he has this
sorry,
kind of
yes, for someone that
polished,
is
yeah.
for someone that is so deeply masculine in his voice, he does have a great androgyny, a great softness to him, a great
Yeah, a
ability.
effeminate kind of quality about him, this air about him, where he's almost kind of a royal in a way, like this demeanor that
Yeah,
just is so smooth and slick and can come off, if he does something just right, or, changes a cadence or stands a certain way, it comes off as a little bit smug, a little bit oily, or if he pulls it back a certain way, it comes off as very sophisticated and noble, you know? So,
I mean, let's say none more so than in the picture of Dorian Gray, when he's incredibly queer coded because he's constantly
yes,
talking about how great
gossiping and
Dorian Gray looks and how horrible all the women he knows are.
yes, and he's very gossipy and all of
It's
that.
incredibly gossipy.
He can also switch the cadence up to be comedic as well. So, he is very quippy and intelligent and smooth and sophisticated and dark and sinister, but light and airy and the androgyny. So, a great supporting character actor, very memorable, charming as hell, incredible voice, who people may not know his face, but they know his voice, that I've been so proud to really highlight on this show, and share people with them just how great he is as a performer, and to not forget his contributions to this era of film. So
Yes, great choices. I absolutely love it. Neither, well, all 3 of them were not in my choices either, which I think is
Okay.
very, very interesting. However, all three of my choices are actually, now there's other people I do want to bring up, but all three of my choices happen to have the most movies out of anybody, male
Okay.
or
So
female.
yours was a popularity contest, I
It's a
see.
popularity contest, but I think surely that means these people define It's a Wonderful Podcast.
Yeah.
They've appeared the most. You expect to see these three people
Makes sense. Yeah.
at the highest percentage when you come to It's a Wonderful Podcast, when you think about It's a Wonderful Podcast. There's people that I want to mention that we haven't, who I feel really, really deserve a mention because they come so very close in my heart as people I love as performers, but also in amount of times they've appeared on the show. And for some reason, I'm just obsessed with this idea at the minute. Burt Lancaster, obviously quite a recent one. A very interesting stat about Burt Lancaster, actually, was that it took 165 episodes for Burt Lancaster to appear on the show. And his second appearance was in episode 207.
Oh my gosh, it was that long.
He's on
That's
8
crazy.
movies already.
Wow. So he very much had a
Which
lot
shows
in the
you,
songs that,
yes,
after seeing him once, we wanted more.
it shows you that we've got a real frequency for Burt Lancaster in later years, which I think is pretty obvious, but we definitely have. He deserves to be mentioned. Obviously, we love him. Glenn Ford on 7 movies is somebody you wouldn't necessarily think we've done 7 movies of, but we have, and he's just wonderful.
Yeah.
George Sanders is there. Gregory Peck, you might not think has, you might think has had more movies than he's had on the show. He's only at 5, but seems like such a staple, such a big part of defining what we love to talk about on It's a Wonderful Podcast. I nearly went with Kirk Douglas on 9.
Yeah.
9 movies of Kirk Douglas's. I nearly went with Bogart, also on 8 movies of Bogart. Like I said before, Jimmy Stewart is on 10. It took me horrible levels of deciding to not go with Spencer Tracy.
Yes,
Also
he came up in my thoughts as well. Oh, wow.
10 movies with Spencer Tracy. And I couldn't put him there because the 3 people that define, or the 3 men, the 3 actors that define It's a Wonderful Podcast to me, it just makes sense that they are. The man behind me, Cary Grant, on 11 movies. Sidney Poitier, also.
Of course. Yes, 11. I struggled. Part of me thought that you would put these 2, and that's why I didn't pick them.
Yes. Sidney Poitier also on 11 movies. And Vincent Price.
Of course, Vincent Price. Yes.
Who's also on 11 movies.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
There's nobody, male or female, who takes the top spot. These 3 are the most frequent.
Okay, I love that. I love that mix as well.
Look, as far as Vincent Price goes, the early days of It's a Wonderful Podcast
was all about Vincent.
Dominated by Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Happens to be because I absolutely adore Vincent Price. I think he's just wonderful. I never tire talking about Vincent Price. He is an era of horror within himself that I always urge anybody to go and watch. Nobody has ever had any more fun within that genre than Vincent Price had, and nobody quite brings that level of total captivating theatricality to his performances than he does in horror. But let's not forget his noir career as well. his career in Laura, in
Yeah.
While the City Sleeps, and other such movies like that. Two of which those two we have covered on the show. But he occasionally shows up in these supporting roles outside of horror, and that's what have been more interesting for me to get
Yes.
into
Yeah.
Price on this show, um, in those areas, really. But I had to put him on there.
Of
I just
course.
adore him immensely.
He's
Cary
wonderful.
Grant,
Mhm.
Cary Grant, very similar to your argument for Jimmy Stewart. He is just he is the definitive old Hollywood
Yes.
star
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
and it just happened to be that he
Had the top
statistically is
spot.
also
Yeah.
our definitive old Hollywood star. The varied movies he's had as well over the course of this show, from the couple of early Mae West sex comedies
Yeah.
in the pre-code time, to all the way through some dark Hitchcock movies, Notorious, of course, and things like that.
Some silly
Recently, with
comedies like Mr.
some silly.
Blandings built his dream house.
Exactly. Mr. Blandings builds his
His
dream
dream
house.
house.
Arsenic and Old Lace. Bringing Up
Yes.
Baby was the second ever episode of the show.
Yeah.
To more recently with Penny
Me
Serenade, a
Serenade, seeing
ridiculously
a really
dramatic.
dramatic turn. Yeah.
But also in slightly later years, you've got Charade that we've covered. It,
Mhm.
the show encompasses Cary Grant's full career, 30 plus years of Cary
Yeah.
Grant's career. And I love that we've done so much, yet there's still so much there
To
for
do. Yeah.
us to do. There's a reason there's a big picture of him behind me. And Sidney Poitier, I mean,
Of
what don't we
course.
always say about Sidney Poitier? He is the one person who has a in remembrance episode dedicated
Yes.
to him.
Yes.
Right after the week after
He had
he
passed.
passed away,
Yeah.
we felt it important to do that. Not only is he a staggeringly important figure in the history of movies and his race on screen. You,
Yeah.
you can't get much more trailblazing than somebody like Sidney Poitier. There's a reason we always come back to him, because he as well, as we very recently talked about in A Raisin in the Sun, also low key has so much variety to
In
his
range.
performances,
Yes. Yeah.
so much range. We often think of him as very assured, very astute, very dignified.
Yes.
Think of 1967, as I always like to call him, with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Heat of the Night, and To Sir with Love. But going to those earlier movies, some of the 50s movies, the
No
Blackboard
Way
Jungle,
Out.
the No Way Outs, the Defiant ones, and Raisin in the Sun as well, only a couple of weeks ago, shows the edge to Poitier, shows
Yeah.
the dynamism to Poitier, the willingness to be athletic, the willingness to be
Yeah.
a bit nasty.
Yeah.
That's very, very important for him to
Yeah. I
be
mean,
able to portray as well.
yeah, I mean, for me, as I talked about, I only had a handful of classic films in my repertoire of films, and so the fact that one of those was a Sidney Poitier film that I grew up watching, To Sir with Love, as somebody who was always finding myself needing to see diversity as a kid falling in love with movies, and his being one of the first classic films I ever saw, and me getting to recommend that to the show before I was even a part of it, was super special for me. And so he has been an iconic figure uh, in discovering, his vast range as an actor, and his impact throughout this show has been such a special thing. So it was very difficult to not have Sydney, but I felt like you were going to have Sydney and Carrie on your list for sure.
Okay,
That
okay.
I was like, okay, we're gonna be able to talk about them because I feel like Morgan's gonna have them. So I think I'm safe to go a different way. But yes, I love that he's the only actor who we've done a special kind of memorial series for on the show. And yes, he is definitely an icon of this channel, 100%.
He is, absolutely. One last little honourable mention, of course, Robert Mitchum on 5 movies, who
Okay, yes.
I always want to do more of, because I
Mhm.
think I didn't feel comfortable putting him in my list ahead of some of the much more frequent
Yes, that's
men
fair.
that we've covered.
An
But
honorable mention,
let's move on from
100%.
the men. Away with the men. No more men. We don't like men anymore.
Yes.
For 3 defining actresses, Jeannine, it's the women's time to shine.
Yes.
There's been plenty of great women show up, quite a lot,
Yeah.
on It's a Wonderful Podcast. Admittedly, as the tally chart says, not as frequently as some of the star men. Not
Yeah.
as frequently. And there is one woman who towers above all other women on It's a
Okay.
Wonderful Podcast history.
Yes. I
There
think I
is.
could guess, but, um, so I do have an honorable mention here as well, and that woman is Elsa Lanchester. Um I mean,
Yes.
the only thing I had ever known her as was the, rejected nanny from Mary Poppins. So and so I had seen her kind of a little bit more aged, and so having kind of realizing that she was the bride of Frankenstein, I was like, "That's the same person?" That she is this, like, iconic figure in movie history, and I just, like, wrote her off as the rejected nanny from Mary Poppins. And then we watched her in things in great supporting roles, like in The Bishop's Wife, just being this great comic relief there. And then, of course, in my favorite role of hers in Witness for the Prosecution, her just going back and forth with Charles Lawton and knowing their real life relationship as a couple, and really seeing the sparks and dynamic and how they related to each other and how they worked together. And despite it being a supporting role, her just being such a shining point and stealing every scene. She was just so amazing, so incredible, so fun to watch, making so many great, intelligent choices in terms of a great comedic performance, and just wanted to give her some love there. Again, just highlighting a great supporting actor that doesn't really get the recognition, which is a part of what this show does. So
100% Elsa Lanchester needs to be in here. Elsa Lanchester, I'd just like to say now, is one of my defining actresses of It's a Wonderful
Oh,
Podcast.
okay.
She absolutely is. For many of those reasons you've just said, and not only do I love her playing against Lawton in Witness for the Prosecution, but it might even be as good in The Big Clock as well, and it's only for,
Yes,
like, one scene, but she's
right? So
completely
good.
unhinged in The Big Clock, and
Yeah.
so's Lawton, but on the total opposite
Different
end of the
side, yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And, I mean, them as a couple, they're a fascinating couple to read up on, because Lawton was, of course, gay. It was
Okay, yeah.
all a marriage of
Of c
them being nice to each other, not a marriage of
Just
convenience, but they
support
did
and,
like each other. They did.
veering, and I think she was also gay herself, was she
Yeah,
not?
yeah,
Yeah, so yeah,
or bisexual, so the stories
yeah,
will tell you. But they they were very fond of each other. They got on like a house on fire. They got on
yeah.
really, really well with each other. Um, it just wasn't a marriage as we think of two
Conventional,
people
yeah,
falling in love with each other today.
yeah.
But they are incredible opposite each other. There's a very interesting stat that I had in my tallies,
Ooh, okay.
um, which the Big Clock was both Charles Lawton and Elsa Lanchester's 5th movie covered on It's a Wonderful Podcast.
Wow,
Elsa
okay.
Lanchester's on 6 movies covered
Wow.
on It's a Wonderful Podcast. She's equal to her husband, and is one of my defining women, defining actresses of the show. Absolutely. She is a constant delight
Yeah.
whenever she shows up. She is able to be utterly crazy. She's not afraid to show herself to be utterly crazy, like a weird, strange cat lady or something like that, yet also totally ethereally, otherworldly
Yes.
beautiful as something like The Bride of Frankenstein that, yes, only shows up for 5 minutes at the end of The Bride of
It's
Frankenstein,
so
but is
iconic.
such
Yeah.
phenomenally iconic. I love that she's one of your honourable mentions because she is
Yes.
one of my defining actresses. But who are your three?
So for my criteria, I wanted to pick somebody who I knew to have incredible range, who was just a very talented actress who could transform into different roles and really be believable in those transformations. I wanted to pick somebody who spoke to the glamour of the era. But also somebody again who is not as, maybe well known. Um, but spoke to kind of
Mm,
the sex appeal and the 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 fancy nature of what people think of old Hollywood glamour.
the
Um,
elegance.
yeah, the elegance, but someone, yes, who I mean, maybe not the average person would think of.
Oh,
And then
this is intriguing.
another great supporting actor who I think maybe gained fame later in their careers, that were known
I
later
hope we
in their
have the same
careers.
person. I hope we have the same person.
But
I got
people really
excited.
need to discover them early in their careers because they were brilliant. So
Okay, come on, please. Please tell me we've got one of the same people here.
my choices are Barbara Stanwyck, Gloria Graham, and Angela Lansbury.
Yes, Angela. Come on, Angela Lansbury. She's in my
Yes,
list as well. Of
yes,
course she is. Why shouldn't she be?
yes.
Can I just say as well, I love, 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 love the fact you put Gloria Graham in. I was so
Yeah.
close to putting Gloria
I
Graham in.
was
I
thinking,
adore Gloria
I
Graham,
was
but
thinking
she's
the
hardly ever
woman
shown up.
yeah, so I just the woman behind you, Katharine
Yes.
Hepburn was in my head. Um,
I'll
just so
say it
many
now. She's my third choice as well.
of
We
course,
know
of
my
course she
three
is.
now.
Of course she is. Um, you know, uh, Donna Reed, uh,
Donna
Marilyn.
Reed.
I loved the conversation we had about Marilyn's intelligence in kind of playing up the comedy or the, the sexual kind of ditziness of a character. But there's so much intelligence in how she does that. And people didn't really pay attention to that. So, I thought about Marilyn's character actresses that really spoke to, the glamour of the era. Even Mae West kind of came up in my head as well, Marlena Dietrich. But I went with Gloria Graham because she is an actress who, again, appeared in our namesake movie. Uh, you know,
She did. She did.
so playing a character that spoke to that glamorous side of old Hollywood, but also showing great range and popping in really in these smaller roles and making such a great impact. I mean, she won an Oscar for I think what 9 minutes of screen time.
Yeah,
Um,
something like that for Bad and the Beautiful.
Yes, and so, just kind of in going through the films that we covered on this show, she was just such a standout in her little bursts of performances, and just really glamorous and charming, and, such a great seductress, but also a lot of thought. She kind of would play very much like, in The Big Heat, the kind of, uh shy, like, "Oh, you don't want me," kind of thing, and coy, um, and charming. So she just had a lot of, ability to portray that glamour, in a really, intelligent way and in really endearing way, in a mysterious way at times. So really enjoyed, thinking about the movies that we've seen her in and her speaking to the glamour of the era for sure. So
I always say nobody plays the mix, and I mean the perfectly blended mix of total sultriness and vulnerability, like and sweetness
yes.
and vulnerability,
Yes.
like Gloria
Yeah.
Graham does. Nobody plays it with such a perfect mix that she
Yes.
does. She's
100%.
never better.
Basically what I was trying to say that you kind of
Yeah,
put into
she's never better than in A Lonely Place, I think. I
Yes.
I mean, she's great in
Yeah.
everything I've ever seen her in, but particularly in A Lonely Place, which we did do as a show as well, as The Big Heat
Mhm.
and The Bad and the Beautiful. Those are the
Yes.
three
Mhm.
three
Yes.
Gloria Graham movies. No more. What's going on?
I
Why don't
know.
we have any more
We do.
Gloria Graham movies? Why? Why?
Yes.
It's strange. I love, 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 love that you've chosen her.
Yes, I mean, and then, obviously a film we have not covered on the show, but Our Namesake, like, just I could s that GIF is on a loop in my head of her, just flipping her hair and walking by, and
She's
just
in the
yes,
movie for
just
like
gorgeous.
a
I
minute.
know, but you remember her, she's so just cute in that movie. So yes, I definitely wanted to pick her to embody that aspect of classic films for sure. And then yes, kind of going back to Angela Lansbury, somebody who people know, as Mrs. Potts or, Murder She Wrote, later in her career, uh, and forget that she was such an amazing classics actress, gorgeous, and that she played a lot of dark characters that didn't
Oh, yeah.
really expect. Like, I just go straight to Gaslight and her character in that film, being kind of this, part of the manipulation of this woman and just, being so cold and harsh
That's not
in
even the worst one.
I know. So just the fact that, like, we see her as this sweet old lady, but going back to her early career and seeing just how dynamic she was and how dark she could be and villainous and, State of the Union. She's this,
Yeah.
kind of boss lady, really taking control
That's
and
not
and
even the
trying to
worst one
manipulate things.
either.
And but then she kind of reins that in the Portrait of Dorian Gray as just this lovelorn woman who is heartbroken. And I loved her in that role as well, just being very kind of earnest and sad, and this woman in love and hurting. And just it was a great kind of rediscovery of somebody who's so well known, to see her in
Yeah.
this early vein and to see the darkness in her that, like, I just was not expecting. So just a great supporting actress in her own right, that people just don't think about that side of her career.
She's incredible, but you still haven't mentioned the worst one, which is The Manchurian Candidate, where she's
Yes, yes.
literally just the picture of evil
Evil.
in that
Yes.
movie.
Yes, we
She's
did a deja vu episode
despicable.
on that. Yeah, yeah.
She's absolutely despicable. How did that woman turn into Miss Price from Bedknobs and Broomsticks and
Right?
Mr. Potts and Jessica Fletcher? How did she turn into what she turned into? But she did. She's phenomenal. She's always been a massive part of
Yeah,
my movie watching life, thanks to Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and I'm so
yeah.
glad that she's become a reasonably frequent part, although it seems like it's been a little
A
while
little
since
while
we've
since we've
had
seen
a
her.
movie of hers
Yeah. Yes.
of
Eh,
of this show. She has 6 movies as well, same as
okay.
Elsa
Good.
Lanchester, by the way.
Yes.
And the
And
same
again,
as your other pick, and the same as your other pick. They're all on 6.
oh, okay. And yeah, I just love that she was my first solo episode with you on the podcast with Bedknobs and
Yes,
Broomsticks as
yes.
well. So just iconic in that aspect as well. And of course, my final pick, Miss Barbara Stanwyck. The versatility this woman has shown. Um, in her work. I mean, we talked about doing that episode with James White, talking Double Indemnity and her in that film, and then we switched to something we covered during the Christmas season, Remember the Night, where she's also with Fred McMurray again, and just the dynamic is completely different. She's like, she has a dark past, but she's sweet and lovable and just wanting to be a better person, and completely different character. And then we see her giving us this Jean Arthur-esque performance in a Capra film with Meet John Doe, and being
Yes.
somebody kind of in a man's world and trying to help somebody out, and having this hopeful determination for our lead down on his luck character, and being this great support to the lead. And then we see her in something like Sorry Wrong Number, a recent film we did on the podcast where she's just kind of having this descent into madness, and she's being this cold woman who we ultimately, are wrapped up in the stress that she's dealing with. And so just the range on her. She is an incredible actress, just showing she embodies every single character she's in, and you feel something different for her with every character. It's believable. It doesn't feel like she's
Yeah.
putting on a false cover. It does she cannot be pigeonholed into one type of acting. Um, so just the range on her. She's just, I think, the most talented and versatile actress, one of that we've had on the channel.
I I I
In the
I
frequency
think
that we've
you
seen
might
her. She's different every time, and she's doing something amazing every time, and she's powerful and interesting and so strong every single time. So,
as far as actually like strikingly talented performers go, she might be right up there. I mean, she might be number one for old Hollywood actresses.
yeah.
Maybe Betty Davis.
Yes.
That argument definitely can be made because there's a real variety to Betty Davis, and Betty Davis makes 5 appearances on the show, only one
Ooh,
less
okay.
than Miss Stanwyck. I'd like to also mention Christmas in Connecticut, one of my favorite old Hollywood Christmas movies, where Barbara Stanwyck is just totally silly. It's a very silly movie. She's manic. She's crazy. It's the most delightful rom-com possible. And to go
Mm.
from that in 1945, Double Indemnity in 44, something like Meet John Doe in 41, and then Sorry Wrong Number in 48 is ridiculous.
Yes, the range is just insane on her, and she hits it every single time.
I love that. I love that. We've mentioned my three, two of my three being, of course, Elsa Lanchester and Angela Lansbury. The third being the lady behind me, Miss
Yes.
Catherine Hepburn. But there are those other honourable mentions we must make. I mean, Betty Davis has to be
Yes.
mentioned,
Mm,
just again for pure quality and variety of performances. Ingrid Bergman has to
mhm.
be mentioned
Yes.
for emotion of performances. Maybe not quite the range of
No, but sh
Stanwyck,
yeah.
but absolute bawl your eyes out emotion at times
Yeah,
with
she's
Ingrid
so
Bergman.
good at that.
And low-key Shelley Winters,
Yeah.
low like, just a little bit of Shelley Winters. I enjoy when Shelley Winters comes up. I'm absolutely disgusted that we haven't mentioned Miss Audrey Hepburn yet either, who for a long time in my tally of actresses was actually very level with her surname sake, Catherine.
Ah, yeah.
Very, very, very level. I've got stats again that I'd like to bring up. Audrey Hepburn beat Catherine Hepburn to 5 appearances on this show after
Oh,
176 episodes.
dang, that took us that long to talk
I
about that
think
woman.
no, that was her 5th. That was her
Oh,
5th.
okay, that was her
What I
5th
mean,
appearance.
after
Okay.
100
Oh,
like
okay. That's when
on
she beat
episode
her.
176, that's when she beat.
Okay,
That
got it.
was the 5th. Which I found very, very, very interesting. I do have a couple more stats, but we'll finish off talking about the Hepburns, I suppose, because Audrey's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's
Again,
in my
she's just
favorite classic
such
movie in Roman Holiday.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
she's such a infectious presence,
Mhm.
I think, on screen. She's always so delightful and pleasant. And I really, really do enjoy her. She brings a regality to
Yes,
situations, even when
100%.
she is playing Eliza Doolittle. She still somehow brings a poise to
Mhm.
the world, and I really
Yes.
like her for that a great deal. But nobody beats Catherine. Nobody will ever beat Catherine Hepburn in my eyes for enjoyability and an actress I just absolutely fall for every single time.
Yes, she has such a distinct
Gravitate
style.
towards.
Mhm.
I'm driven towards her complete ballsiness to do whatever the hell she wanted to do
Yes.
all the time.
Confidence. 100%
The
confidence, always.
yes, the unashamed confidence, the utter stubbornness of her,
Mhm.
yet the striking performance range she has as well. There are very few sillier performances than her in Bringing Up Baby. And she's able to do that whilst doing what she did 30 years later in The Lion in Winter.
Yes.
Is that the same person? Is that really the same person? Yes, it is. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And all the other Tracy and Hepburn movies
Yeah.
we covered
Their
on the
chemistry,
show,
electric
where
for
they are
sure.
just yes, they are electric together. They are phenomenal together. I adore the dynamic of those rom-coms, and it doesn't work if Spencer's not there. No,
Yeah.
which is why Spencer, nearly makes your actors list.
Yeah.
But Catherine's just she's on another level. They're
Yeah.
both great, those two, as the long-standing quote unquote couple that
Couple.
they
Yeah.
were. But there's nobody better. There's nobody better. And there's also no woman more frequent on It's a Wonderful
Okay.
Podcast
Number
than Catherine
1.
Hepburn with
Yeah.
8
Oh,
appearances.
goodness. Okay. Not a surprise
There
there.
go. Let's do our fun one now. Let's do our
Okay.
fun one. I want to do our fun one because I
Okay.
don't think it will require much in-depth explanation. This
No,
fun one.
no.
I like this. Janine, I would like to ask you what your defining mustaches are.
So, funnily enough, I do have an honorable mention here as well. So yes, the switch up on this I think is really funny, as Mustache Hall of Fame is your frequent list that you make on episodes where we do have a mustache featured in the episode. And my thing in most recent times has been the classic actors crush list. So, what do these actors do to become a crush for me? And so you're doing that. So yes, I was thinking about the mustaches we've seen. Tyrone Power kind of was a thought.
Ooh,
Uh,
ooh,
but my honorable mention is David Niven in Separate
very
Tables.
nice.
I actually went back and listened to that episode recently, and we took a little decent amount of time talking about how much we liked that mustache. So I had to mention it. And
Okay,
he's very well known for a good mustache, so honorable mention there. But
okay,
my
very
3 mustache picks are Gregory Peck in The Gunfighter, William Powell in The Thin Man, and just because I think it's funny to have a fake mustache on this list, Alan Arkin in Wait Until Dark.
yes. Okay, for the disguise mustache. I
Yes.
like it. I'm surprised you didn't go for Judy Holliday in Adam's Rib as
I
that
thought
one
about
scene
that.
where she turns into a man in the courtroom.
Yeah. That was also an honorable mention for me as well. It was in my rotation of thought, but I was like, only one kind of ridiculous one. But yes,
Okay,
I mean, the controversy that Gregory Peck's mustache, put into motion in terms of the filmmakers not wanting him, I think was what a producer who didn't want him to have it, and was kind of talking about the failure of the movie because was going to fail because he had this mustache and all of this kind of
yeah, it was
drama.
either if I'm remembering right, was it Zanuck? Zanuck, Selznick, or Harry Cohn. It's one of the 3 of them. They're
Mhm,
always
yeah.
causing trouble as producers.
Yes,
Screen
and
time.
Peck refused to get rid of his mustache. So, and you would not expect him to look so damn good with the mustache, but man, if he does not look so damn good with the mustache, I think you can know who's number 1 on my crush list. Uh, but
It's not
yes,
about your crush list
I
today.
know,
It's
I
about
know, I know.
mine.
But yes, definitely my number 1 mustache, just because I would not have expected it to look as good as it does, and it works. It works for the character he's playing in this Western. It helps kind of distinguish him from, other roles we've seen him in, other performances that he's done. It really nestles him nicely into the Western world, just even having that on his face, and it looks really good. So great. William Powell, iconic for having a mustache, so he definitely has the mustache that fits his face the best because it's just was part of his normal look as an actor. And so to kind of discover him for me in the Thin Man movies, I just loved his look. He felt just so dapper and sophisticated and a little bit silly, and the mustache kind of played into that in his look. So he wears a
Yes,
mustache incredibly well.
the
Uh,
perfect 30s mustache.
yes. And then Wait Until Dark, seeing Alan Arkin be a villain, and one of his more convincing, actually impressive looking disguises was him all with gray hair and this kind of big bushy mustache. And the fact that he's even wearing a disguise to trick a blind woman is just
Is
uh
silly.
is silly in general, but it actually was pretty convincing looking, and I think just funny to see him, see that character do all these kinds of silly things in this very dark role, and it worked. So
You've just chosen Alan Arkin because you wanted to talk about Alan Arkin in Wait Until Dark. You don't care about his mustache
I
at all.
liked his
I'm
mustache.
seeing
I
through
thought it was
this.
very convincing for a fake mustache, and, yeah, I looked at pictures of it just to kind of remind myself, and yeah, I think it
Okay.
looked pretty good
Okay.
for a disguise, like because he actually looks kind of different than, and you'd think disguises, back then were not probably well done, and he
Well, it
didn't
was
even
always
go that
glasses and a mustache, but
exactly, but
and a
it
big
looked
nose.
looked very fake, but his big nose, combination wig, all of that looked pretty convincing. So, yes.
Well, yes, I'll just say I'm glad that you actually chose what is still the best mustache in the Mustache Hall of Fame, which is Gregory Peck's in The Gunfighter.
Yes.
Absolutely, it is.
Yes.
You are quite right there. Well, let's move on from your defining mustaches, Jeannine, to my defining crushes, and let's discuss what Morgan finds attractive in women. Yay, let's spend
Yes.
ages on this. Let's not spend any time on this whatsoever and just think what you'll think about this.
Okay.
Because I have three. One of them's very specific. They're all very specific.
Okay. Okay.
They're all very, very specific. They're all in particular. No, one of them's in. Two of them are in particular movies. One of them is
Just
just this
generally.
person whenever this happens.
Okay.
So, which is a bit like strange. That's my caveat one. Let's leave that till the end. Number
Okay.
one,
Mhm.
well, it's not tiered, but you know what I mean. My first one I'll talk about is Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday, and this is purely down to her attitude in Roman
Yes.
Holiday.
She's so
I
cute. She's so cute.
the cuteness, the fun franticness, the free spiritedness, the ability to not care who she's supposed to be when
Yeah.
she just wants to run around and dance around and have a load of fun
Yeah.
while still being the very prim, proper, regal person that Audrey
Yeah.
Hepburn obviously is. I think I just appreciate that in women. I appreciate that in that is what I am attracted to. I think
Okay.
someone who
I
is
like that.
able to be prim and proper, knows they're prim and proper, but ultimately doesn't care about that when they just want to have fun. And
Yeah.
then they just go all out and act crazy, and it's a complete ball of a time. I love it.
Okay, I like that.
You know, it's one of my favorite old Hollywood movies as
Yes,
well for a reason.
100%. Yeah.
And it does house both of our
Y
maybe number
yeah,
one old Hollywood
yes,
crushes.
because Gregory Peck, 100% crush generally, but in that movie, ugh,
Yeah,
he's perfect,
again,
perfection.
same. Audrey Hepburn, a beautiful woman, stunningly physically attractive woman, just incredibly captivating. But in
in that
Roman
movie
Holiday, there's another
specifically.
level to it.
Yes,
There just
yes.
is. Second is okay, you might call me basic for this, but then I'll explain it. So this is
Okay.
Marilyn Monroe, but in particular Marilyn Monroe when she's wearing the glasses in How to Marry a Millionaire.
Yes! Oh, she's so pretty and so cute, and the fact that she, as that character, is embarrassed to wear the glasses, but she looks so beautiful. So I love when another character tells her, "You look amazing in these glasses. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?" Yeah.
So, not
Mhm.
normal Marilyn
Yeah.
Monroe. Like, normal Marilyn Monroe, it's like, okay, there is an objectively very attractive person,
Yes.
but it's specifically Marilyn Monroe when she's got the glasses on in How to Marry a Millionaire as
Yeah.
that character. When
Yes.
she's on this other wave of intelligence. I almost put Judy Holliday in Born Yesterday in for this
Yes.
same reason. When there's you can call it ditzy, but it's not because it's just a different type of
Way
intelligence.
of
There's a
thinking. Yeah.
different type of way of thinking. She's not stupid, which is a phenomenal misconception about I think both of
Yes.
those characters.
Mhm.
But Marilyn in How to Marry a Millionaire is completely funny. It showed me again that she as an actress was willing to be comedically stupid, and I appreciate that again
Yes, and I said she
in
played it with
someone.
so much intelligence. Yeah. Mhm.
She did, and yeah, and that very interesting way of thinking that she does have. But oh my god, do these glasses just light up her
Yes.
face
Yeah.
even more? I think
Yeah.
she's beautiful in the glasses.
Yes.
Specifically in the glasses. So there's Marilyn in the glasses as well. And this is my little caveat one, but it's Gloria Graham's dimples
Oh,
when she
okay.
smiles because she has a really cute smile and I just really
She
like that.
does. I'm telling you, that image of her just flipping her hair and walking by,
It
like,
is.
so good.
Maybe it's this. It's the cute side of old Hollywood actresses that I appreciate more. I don't think that's the case in modern actresses, to be honest. I think I'm more into kind of I don't know. That's the wrong way of phrasing it, what I was going to say then. Um, not necessarily cute, but quite, I suppose you could say powerful,
Okay.
in terms of a powerful personality
Yeah.
of a modern actress. I think I prefer that in my modern actresses more, but I think probably because all the I've got an inherent version of the supposedly powerful women in old Hollywood ultimately being femme fatales. So they
Yeah.
kill me in the end. You know what I
Very
mean?
dark,
It's that kind
very
of.
dark turn.
Or there's Marlene Dietrich in the suit in
Oh,
Morocco, in the suit and the
yes.
top hat, which I don't usually find Marlene. I love Marlene Dietrich, but I don't usually find her very attractive. However, in that scene,
In
I'm
that
like,
suit.
okay, you're
Yes.
going for something here, and I
Mhm.
appreciate this. Go
Yeah.
for it. But yeah, Gloria Graham's dimples.
Okay.
I
I like
is
it.
my other one.
The pics for sure. Some
There we go.
gorgeous ladies. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Moving on, of course, to three defining genres or styles of It's a
Okay.
Wonderful Podcast. Many have existed in
Yeah.
the show's history. You could say one more than the rest, but maybe that's just a recency thing. I think it
Yes.
probably is just a recency thing. Janine, what have we gone for three defining
Um,
genres or styles? How have we interpreted
okay.
this particular segment?
Well, my honorable mention would be horror as a genre that we've
Okay.
discussed
Okay.
on the show, just because I think classic horror obviously differs from modern horror because it's more about the ambiance and the vibes and the tone that it sets and how, the world looks. And that's where you kind of get your kind of creepy energy from. Um, so it's more kind of the quality of it, the style kind of, really being the focus over more modern horror films. So I love that classic horror films love to set up a good spooky vibe for you. I think I
Yeah.
saw that a lot when we did a lot of those haunting movies and, The Haunting of Hill House. And even when we talked, the vampire movies we did, it was all kind of about the vibes. So I love classic horror being able to kind of set the vibes. For my
Well,
genre,
similarly, yes, similarly, I've kind of specified it a little bit more there and put gothic horror as one of mine.
yes, yes,
Because it
100%.
echoing exactly what you said, because it's very aesthetic based, it's very
Yes.
shadowy, it's very, old world
Silhouettes and
visuals
creeping and
and
yeah. Fog and
universal monster yeah, the aesthetic of the universal monsters, of which we've covered all major Universal Monsters movie, or
yeah.
all first Universal Monsters movies on this show, the first one of each of them, and a great deal of Vincent Price movies as well, of course, are
Yes.
heavily gothic horror, this heightened aesthetic, and personal kind of melodrama that you get with the gothic as an idea is
Yeah.
so prevalent in the horror movies we've primarily covered on the show. They do focus on personal psyche in these overwhelming, larger than life
Yeah.
locations and supernatural situations,
Yeah.
and but occasionally um person to person kind of evilness rather than
Yes.
anything over the
Oh,
top, and that's very
yeah,
much the
very
gothic
intimate,
show.
very much about the tone and the feeling
Yeah.
that it gives you. So
We're
my
we're on the
3
same line there. I like that.
Yes. So my 3 genre/styles that I think embody what we talk about on this show, are noirs, particularly melodrama noirs,
Okay, yes.
romance films, particularly screwball comedies, and
Okay.
didn't really have a specific subgenre for this, but a genre that I think we've really been kind of gearing up doing a little bit more of, and that is westerns. Um,
Okay. Okay, I like this
yes.
because
So
I
in
I
t
I do
yeah.
have I do have a westerns on mine as well. We're hitting similar things here.
Yeah.
I like this. But
So, I mean,
my
in terms
my
of
my
Western
3 my 3 being gothic horror,
yeah,
um,
Westerns.
I've written down nastier American westerns
Okay.
and slash revisionist, because there's a particular distinction that we'll talk
Okay,
about now. And
okay.
I've also written down pre-code movies as a style.
I thought about that. I thought about that because I always talk
Mm,
about how much I love the modernity, the modern feeling of pre-code films and how couples and storylines feel like something you would see today that people don't really think they are gonna see in classic films because they don't really know about the code system. And like 30s movies really kind of got a little gritty and risque, and people don't think about that.
Gatsby. Yeah.
Yes, they just think of kind of the 40s and the 50s and kind of, these kind of more clean films that kind of danced around issues. So, I thought about Pre-Code for sure because I loved how modern those movies feel. But, just in kind of melodrama, I am very much a soapy kind of girl. Like, I grew up watching, you know, teen dramas and things like that and fell in love with just these messy stories. So I love noir films, the darkness, the kind of thriller aspects of those films and the grayness of the characters. But the melodramatic ones where there's this descent into madness or this big twist revealed or just have an ambiguous ending that it's not perfect. It's not tied up in a nice little bow. Just kind of the complexity of the melodramatic version of a noir, I think is just really fun and gritty and nasty, as you say. So I love kind of the twists and turns that a melodramatic noir gives, and we've been
Yeah.
talking more and more of those recently. So
We have. You might be surprised that I've not put some form of noir
no,
on
I
my
know
3,
I
but
was
this is
very
because I was
shocked.
absolutely convinced you would, so it wouldn't matter anywhere.
Yes, because
So
every
we could
time I
talk about
suggest
it.
movies, it's always some thriller noir thing, and you're like, "We
We
talked,
have
we have to." branch out a little bit more. And I'm like, I
But we
know,
love
but
noir. I
but
love
the plot
noir.
of this movie sounds so juicy. Like that's kind of
They all
regular conversations we have. Yeah.
and they always are, and I love that you've specified it as noir melodramas and these personal noirs rather than the kind of system noirs. I think there's a real distinction
Yes.
between noirs that view institutions as evil and noirs that view just other people as evil and doing
Yeah.
doing evil things to
Yeah.
each other. I think there's quite a distinction in those two areas between, say, a Fritz Lang noir and a Robert Siodmak noir, because I
Yeah.
think Robert Siodmak really likes to get. He's a much more artistic director, I think, than Lang is. Lang's a technical director. He can be by the numbers. He can be very okay. He can be
Yeah.
experimental and try new things, be very, very influential and innovative in his career. I mean, outstandingly so. But his noirs are very, very organizations are evil when I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it. Even something like The Big Heat, and it's
Mhm.
able to get nasty. He's able to get
Yeah.
really, really nasty and go really very far. But Robert Siodmak turns on the melodrama, turns on a bit of the soapiness, turns on
Yeah. The
the
grayness of
twisty,
people, you
turny
know.
flashbacks, dark shadows everywhere,
Yeah.
ridiculous aesthetics, ludicrous chiaroscuro lighting all over the
Yeah.
place, and these people that are just horrible for each other
Yeah.
continuing on with each other because they just have to. And does it result in great things? No, and that's perfect noir melodrama, and we cover a lot of them on the show. We do.
Yes, yes. So definitely that kind of subgenre of that genre is really fun for me to do on the show. Romance films, of course, but screwball
Yes.
comedies, I think is the genre I personally end up finding myself talking about the most that really showcases uh a genre that really laid the groundwork for rom-coms that we have today. It really speaks to the history of a very popular genre now, particularly kind of coming up in the 90s and the early 2000s, being this boom of rom-coms, but just reminding people that it started with great things like It Happened One Night and just this great dynamic between male and female
Yeah.
characters. Um, being able to play the kind of hate between each other, but still managing to showcase the underlying chemistry and potential love that you're going to see, and making it such a fun ride to get to how these characters are going to come together. Just great dynamics like with Catherine and Carrie in things, and um Jimmy Stewart in with anybody. He always seemed to find great chemistry with his leading ladies 100%.
Yeah.
Um, so just such a fun genre, really showcasing a great fun genre that is my favorite to this day. And so as somebody who loves rom-coms, getting to go back in time and see kind of the start of that genre and the groundwork of building to modern day, is such a fun thing for me every time we talk a movie that depicts that, and I see all of these little things that are now in movies that are so popular now, and just love sharing that with people, like, don't forget, you love rom-coms, don't forget movies like It Happened One Night, don't forget movies like, um, uh uh,
Not
Arsenic
bringing
and
up
Old Lace or Bringing Up Baby.
always bringing up
Yes,
His Girl Friday,
Adam's Rib, His Girl
Man Dog.
Friday. Yes. Don't forget movies like that, because they are so fun and, you know yes, love it.
Yes,
So,
they are
yeah.
ridiculously fun. Well, before we talk about westerns, or as I've referred to them, nastier American westerns,
Yeah.
um, let's just have a little bit more to say about pre-code, because it is one of the absolute
Okay.
most fascinating times in Hollywood history. You are right in saying the heavy modernity that you can feel from
Mhm.
pre-code movies is very much there. I I particularly appreciate the more romantic side of pre-code movies rather than the, say, gangster side. I like movies like
Yeah.
Public Enemy, Scarface, 1932
Mhm.
Scarface, which we've covered. I don't think we've done the Public Enemy on the show.
But even
But
something
it's
like,
things.
Death Takes a Holiday, having, like, a gay coded character and having these conversations about
Yeah,
drinking and sex and all of these things, or I love Nick and Nora from the Thin Man movies, like, that's always my shining
exactly.
point of
Very, very
Pre-Code,
frank.
a very modern feeling couple where, they are pure equals and there's no kind of, like, man being the dominant and woman staying at home and these
No,
kind of gender roles. They are all pure equals. He will do whatever he can to, like, have her be a part of the mission and, you know, just the equality there and the love there and the companionship there and the respect for each other, as a couple, in a early film is always kind of my strongest point of feeling that modern feeling from a pre-code movie is the Thin Man films, for sure.
yeah, and the ones we've covered that I think define why I want to
Yeah,
talk about this
yeah.
the best on the show are Queen Christina with Greta
Mhm.
Garbo, which I think is one of the best. Just you can't possibly ever do this
Yeah.
in the height of the code. She's not just queer coded in that movie. She is flat out doing whatever the hell she wants with anybody she wants. I'm actually certain. I mean, Morocco with Marlena
Marlena
Dietrich,
Dietrich, yeah.
when she's wearing that suit and that top hat, performing that scene, actually does on screen kiss a
Kiss
woman
a
in
Woman, yeah.
1930. Greta Garbo in Queen Christina is Greta Garbo's phenomenally kind of mysterious anyway. In that sense, in a sex sense, you get Mae West
Oh,
giving it
yeah. All
absolutely
these flirty
everything
lines to every man she sees, like,
in
powerhouse.
yeah in the I think two movies we covered from 32 and 33. I think in She
Yeah.
Done Him Wrong and I'm No Angel,
Mhm.
but she's complete. She seems unhinged in those movies. Yet she's just laying around, strutting around, going, "Come on, then, come and give me what you want to give me, because
Yeah.
I'm here ready to take it." And I like this attitude so
Yes.
much.
So good.
It's always it's interesting to get into the frank discussions about violence and drugs and
Mhm.
real horribleness that you can in areas like
Mhm.
in 1932's Scarface. But pre-code movies are never more fascinating than when they are romantic. Than when they deal so frankly with love relationships and sex.
Yeah.
Trouble
Mhm.
in Paradise is another great one. Blonde Crazy is another
Yeah.
great one that we've covered. And I love them. I
Yeah.
think they're great.
No,
I
that's great.
wish
That's a
I'm
great
so
pick.
thankful. I said on a recent video actually that is up on the channel now. I am so thankful that pre-code movies exist, yet I'm always so saddened that they didn't last for longer.
I know, we coulda gotten so much more, but then you just watch, like, British films and they kind of delve into issues that,
Well, yeah, you
American
can.
pre-code films think of,
Different
like Brief
censorship.
Encounter, a film kind of, showing an affair and depicting that in such an open way, almost making it
Yeah.
feel okay, in a positive light almost, film of, the post-code era, mid-code, after the code era.
Mid-40s,
Yes,
mid-40s.
would never, glorify, um, an affair and have our 2 characters come out of it as unscathed as they were, they would be
Yeah.
punished, you know? So, yeah, definitely, you can find ways to find more modernity in film, post the Hays Code, but yeah, I wish it was an era that lasted longer because the films that got to kind of play in that playground of open conversation, were really great.
Yeah, and look, these westerns that we want to talk about,
Yeah.
I've written it very specifically in that way because when you actually think about it, the westerns we primarily and very primarily focus on are, in their way, revisionist westerns. The High Noons, the 310 to Yumas, the
Gunfight at the
Man from
OK.
Laramie,
Yeah.
the Gunfighter, the Gunfighter.
Yeah.
They're all kind of pessimistic westerns.
Yeah.
They all have a realism to them, a somewhat bleakness to them, or at least
Yes.
a interesting introspection to them about individuals rather than this perfect world western. Even Shane, that is one of the most beautifully
Yeah.
stunning looking movies ever, has real nastiness to it at some
And it's like,
points.
and it kind of contradicts this idea, these characters are doing that, contradicting this idea of a cowboy being this hero and how everyone else views them. And then when we get this personal look into them, they're reluctant. They don't wanna be this person. They just kind of
Yeah,
were, won one big gunfight and killed one, slung their gun faster than the guy coming at them, and now they're stuck with this reputation, and now everybody wants a piece of them, and now everyone's putting them on this pedestal, and they just wanna get by. I think a lot of the westerns we've discussed have characters like that who,
yeah,
are put on this pedestal that they don't really wanna be on, that they never asked for, that don't have these egos that have been thrust upon them, and you're just kind of trying to do what's right or trying to move past a dark past they've had and just really adding this complexity to what you think a simple premise of a cowboy, or a man from the old west would be, and adding some real kind of, grit and empathy and interest to a character that you would on a surface level see as simple. So I think we've talked some really great westerns that delve into some complexity and great performances. And I also think it's a genre where actors that we can kind of typically see in one style of film or kind of dance around similar characters, they can kind of step out of that in a Western and be a little different, and we
Glenn
get to
Ford,
yes, and we get to see them in a new vein, Jimmy Stewart in a Western,
Jimmy
and
Stewart.
yes, and, Gregory Peck in a Western, and,
Yeah,
Kirk Douglas in a Western, so it's kind of a nice little, flashy genre switch up for actors that we're typically used to seeing in suits and totally different kind of style and vein of film. So
yeah.
that's what I love about the westerns we've talked. There's complexity there that you wouldn't think would be. You think it would just be a fun kind of shoot 'em up big genre picture. But the ones we've discussed on this show really show some really interesting performances and characters, and it's really nice departure in seeing an actor in a different avenue than we're used to seeing them. So that's why I picked westerns.
Well,
So.
I'm wondering now, as we move into our final segment of our big
Oh
celebration here
gosh.
for 300
Yes.
episodes of It's a Wonderful Podcast, if one of the three defining movies, and notice it written down there in front of you, of course, if you are watching, it says the three defining movies of It's a Wonderful Podcast, Jeannine, I'm wondering if one of yours is perhaps
I
a
mean,
Western. It doesn't have to be, but it might be.
it is not. It is not. No.
Oh, interesting. Well, I would hope that one of these is the same movie that we both have.
Okay. I know
It,
I'm like nervous, like, "Oh, what did you pick?" Um,
I don't think we have to be nervous. And
I'm
ultimately,
just
these choices, we don't have to over explain these choices
okay.
because
Okay.
I think they're
Maybe
what they are. I
self-explanatory.
mean,
Yes.
I hope they're self-explanatory, but I think one of mine might be quite interesting. I really
Okay.
do.
Well, my honorable mention pick is A Stolen Life. This is a movie
Okay,
that
okay.
really showcases everything we try to do here. It's a movie that that features big name classic actors, but maybe not a lot of people know about. It's a film that shows a complicated story. It's also a film that shows kind of special effects in an early era that people don't
Yeah.
expect could be done in that era. So you're getting a complex, really interesting story, great performances from big name actors, and a role that you maybe had never heard of them or a movie you'd never heard of. Um, and a great kind of special effects of that era. So definitely, I think just a little film that is a little hidden gem, which speaks to the things that we try to showcase on the show. A really fun discovery for us, I think, when we watched it, um,
Yeah,
and a
Betty
really
Davis
interesting
as
movie.
twins and Glenn
Yes.
Ford again.
Yes, and that was my introduction to Glenn Ford. There's a really great channel, Be Kind Rewind, who I fell in love with her videos, kind of these deep dives into classic films and classic actresses and Oscar wins from early eras. And so I kind of went on this deep dive of all her videos, and her very first video was on this movie. And she talked about it being this small film that maybe no one had ever heard of. And so I immediately wanted to watch it and then brought it to the show here. And so it definitely just speaks to what we try to do, discovering new old movies. So had to
Yes,
mention
yes.
that as an honorable mention. So my 3 films that I feel like define what we do here at It's a
Okay,
Wonderful Podcast are Separate
go on.
Tables,
Okay, yes, makes sense. I like it.
Vic Victim,
Very nice.
and La Belle et la Bête.
Oh, very nice choices. I like it. Not the same choices as mine. I
Okay.
love that you've gone with that. I was expecting Separate Tables, so I didn't put it on there.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure on the last milestone episode, the 250th, we named Separate Tables as the most It's a Wonderful Podcast movie ever.
Yeah.
Which it may very well still be. It may
I
very
mean,
well still be.
yeah.
And doubly more so, I think, now because of Burt Lancaster. But
Yeah.
and our recent obsession with Burt Lancaster, or at least mine. But I love those 3. I'll give my 3 choices quickly now, and we'll
Okay.
get into a nice discussion about all these movies because I have chosen M. Fritz Lang's
Okay.
M. Peter
Okay.
Lorre. The Night of the Hunter
I knew you were gonna.
on there for the 3 defining movies has to be. A No Way Out.
Okay. All right.
I've
I like
chosen
that.
No
I
Way
love
Out.
that we both have a non-English speaking film in our lists. Um and also the reason I have Separate Tables uh is because I was out in the world at a Schmodown event, and one of my fellow competitors came up to me and talked to me about this episode. They listened to it and they were just like, I can't believe you did an episode on Separate Tables. Who is doing a podcast talking about Separate Tables? And told me it was a great episode and was just very impressed that our podcast was talking about this little movie that, like, the average person had no clue about, that, you wouldn't expect a podcast to talk about. But the other film that he also mentioned that he was surprised we were talking about and not thinking a podcast would talk about was Night of the Hunter. So those were 2 movies
Why?
that somebody came up to me and talked to me about, that they had listened to them, that they were surprised that we were covering it, that they never would have thought a podcast would have talked about it, and they really enjoyed the episodes. So the fact that you picked the other film that this person brought up to me, it speaks volumes.
Look, I've
Shout out to
always
Ty
loved that story
Lieberman.
about Yes, I've always loved that story about Separate Tables. I feel like we do tell it quite frequently, but here is the perfect place to tell it again.
Yeah.
Um, the other one that he mentioned in that little spiel, being Night of the Hunter, that idea doesn't even come into it because while Separate Tables was voted as the most It's a Wonderful Podcast movie ever by us on the last milestone episode, and thus deserves a place in this little
Yes.
discussion now, the question as to what is Morgan's favourite ever movie has always been one I've struggled to answer, like deeply,
Yeah.
deeply, deeply, deeply struggled to answer. Yet whenever anybody asks me that question now, I find it easier because I tell them it's Night of the Hunter. Because
Okay.
it's the one movie I recommend everybody I see who asks me, who knows me for old movies. I say, well, what's your favourite movie? I'll say, go and watch Night of the Hunter. So it must be my favourite movie.
Yes, if it's one that you feel like is, doing enough to get somebody as a fan of classic films. Um,
So not only did it end out our our impromptu Charles Lawton series,
yeah.
who is a defining, It's a Wonderful Podcast actor
Mhm.
himself, along with Mitchum, who is a semi-defining It's a Wonderful Podcast
Yes.
actor himself. It's also one of the weirdest movies you could possibly wish for, one of the most unique fairy tale, horrible,
Great
nasty, yet
visuals.
really wholesome and terrifying and sweet, with genuinely good child performances in the
Mhm.
mid-50s. What's going on there? How does that
Yeah.
happen? The terror of Robert Mitchum, the monstrous quality of Robert Mitchum in that movie, the fact it is in 3 distinct parts,
Yeah.
like, really distinct acts. That middle act being the traversing down the river, almost like Huckleberry Finn, with all
Yeah.
the creatures everywhere and the constant threat of the man in black on his horse following.
Looming, and him under this guise of being this, like, religious prophet and doing all these awful things under that mask of
Another
religion and
phenomenal
yeah.
Yeah, another phenomenal layer to it being that it isn't even condemning of religion, because your wholesome maternal hero, Lillian Gish, is also deeply focused on
Yeah.
religion, deeply Christian, and it is that battle between the two of them at the
Yeah.
end, that hymn singing battle between the two of them, and Mitchum's doing the whistling and singing, leaning on the everlasting arms. Nobody has ever been more terrifying as an actual
I know.
human being than Harry Powell
Yeah,
in Night of the Hunter. It is a
brilliant movie.
stunning movie. There's
Yeah.
no movie like it. There's no movie that's ever been made that is as indefinable as Night of the Hunter.
Yeah, which is why it's so
It's
sad
also
that's the
why I
only
say
film Charles Laughton directed.
it is. It's also why I'm saying categorically, it is now my
Okay.
favorite movie, because I think it has to be, and has to be the defining movie of It's a Wonderful Podcast for me. But there are these other two as well that
Y yeah.
yes,
Yeah, so for me, of course, separate tables on the list. It definitely, because I think, I listened to the episode, as I said recently, and I was trying to remember, like, how I came about it, and on the episode, I did say I was looking through, like, the Turner Classic Movies section on a streaming service, and it came up under, like, Oscar winners, and so I'm looking at it, and I just see this big cast list, David Niven, Deborah Kerr, Burt Lancaster, Rita Hayworth, and so, I don't think I had really been well versed on any of their films at that point, but I knew all of those names. And so I'm curious, what is this movie with this big name cast? And it feels like it's going to be a really interesting ensemble piece. David Niven, I know him to be kind of this dry comedic actor, and this seems like a drama. What is and he won an Oscar for this. Like what? So I need to know what this is. And so the fact that it's this film really, hinging on an ensemble, getting all these different kind of soapy stories, seeing an actor who I knew to be more comedic doing a great dramatic role playing this tragic character, having, chemistry with someone like Deborah Kerr, who you wouldn't expect would kind of spark off like that. My first time seeing Burt Lancaster, a name that I knew so well but had never seen any of his work. Rita Hayworth, I kind of only knew from a scene from Shawshank Redemption of her in
yeah,
Gilda flipping her hair. That's all I really knew of her. Getting to see her actually act and be this fully realized performer, and even just the side cast and kind of their little quippy conversations and murmuring whispers about what's going on with these other kind of leading characters all just worked really well. a really kind of great message of the film, really heartbreaking characters, really interesting performances, and just a great showcase of old Hollywood with that movie in seeing all of these actors kind of bounce off each other. So it was a kind of, like I talked about Victor Mature's performance, this was a bit of a revelation for me in getting to see actors that whose names I knew so well but had never really seen really shining in a very simple story because it was based on a stage play, I believe. So very kind of contained story. It really played into all the soapy things I loved. And so just a really great illustration of um, old Hollywood shining its brightest with just the
Yeah.
solid performances, not a complicated thing to follow and, just a really tight story. And so really just loved the discovery of this movie and then knowing kind of it has this significance to it as well, that I wasn't even aware of. And then to have somebody just come up to me and talk to me like,
Yeah.
being impressed that we were celebrating a movie like this just added that little extra you know, flavor to this choice.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. But another great area of what I always love talking about on this show is when we talk about movies that are not afraid to deal with horrible subject matters, or not
yeah,
necessarily even horrible subject matters, but tough subject matters, and give them real airtime, real thought provoking, a real thought provoking movie. Be
yeah,
very fair. It's what we just said we like about pre-code. So we certainly like it about slightly later movies as well,
yeah,
which is why I've put No Way Out on, because
yeah,
No Way Out has some deplorable scenes in it. Really horrifying to watch
yeah,
racist scenes in it.
yeah,
And it's not the movie, it's the characters within
characters, yeah.
the movie. Richard Widmark is he's evil in Kiss of Death. You've just mentioned
Yes,
Victor. He's but he's kind of like delightfully evil in Kiss of Death. In No Way Out, Richard Widmark is terrifyingly cruel.
yeah,
He is just spitefully evil, but he's against Sidney Poitier in
mhm,
Sidney Poitier's first starring role. This is 1950. This is such a significant thing to be in a major movie at the time in 1950. Your
yeah,
director's Joseph Mankiewicz, so you're bringing real quality
yeah,
to the picture while having it be so bold, so clever, so fair in its depictions of things, so reasonable in its depictions of things, of real horrible racism.
yeah,
And having Poitier, one of the defining actors in It's a Wonderful Podcast, begin in No Way Out, it had to be in there because I think
yeah,
similarly to one of your choices, it's dealing with a tough subject matter
mhm.
very reasonably at a time when you wouldn't necessarily
Necessarily
expect.
think a movie would talk about that in such a kind of honest, bold way. Yeah, a great choice. And, we were really much in a 60s niche because that was kind of his big time for Sidney Poitier. So to go all the way back to the beginning of his career and see, you know, the first glimmers of his brilliance and a film in that era in 1950 dealing with racism in such a harsh honest way it is unexpected, so it's really kind of a nice surprise. So, yes, definitely love that pick. Um,
Go for victim then.
yes. So, again, bouncing off of that, I have loved, you know, the misconception of early films not really, having the ability to really delve into serious issues. And again, I think this is what I talked about, with the loss of pre-code films, we go overseas to get films talking about bolder issues that films in the coded era could not talk about. And so, Victim, seeing this film from the early 60s really delve into the issues of discrimination against homosexual people and wrapping it in this story that is a thriller and a mystery, um, and dealing with it in this vein of, a very genre picture, but with a very real subject matter, I think was really intelligent how they handled it. And I think really uh, relatable for people. Even today, and, years later from the '60s, what the struggle of what gay people had to go through. So, it was such just a really interesting surprise to find a film who that really wasn't afraid to shy away from the discrimination against gay people, and that it was the part of this kind of whole murder plot, and to kind of add that entertainment factor of making it a genre picture, but really having such realness about it. This was such a surprise of a film I had no idea about, um, and so just to discover a movie really talking about something so real, in a very
Yeah.
early era was just really intriguing and interesting to me. And, I think we try to talk a lot of films that highlight really tough issues, because again, like I said, I think the average person who thinks of classic films don't think that they were allowed to have this type of substance or delve into these really topical issues that are still seen today. And so I love that we can use the show to highlight those types of movies. And I think Victim was a perfect movie that spoke to that. So,
Yeah, and what I love about both that and No Way Out is that they are totally, completely watchable. They're not bleak,
yeah,
miserable movies. They
yeah,
have tough scenes in them, yet they're not sad, I never want to watch that again, one-time views.
yeah,
They are movies you can watch and enjoy
are
watching and
entertaining.
thoroughly
Yeah.
appreciate watching because they tackle their subject matter
Hmm.
in such a way that it results in ultimate positivity,
Yeah.
even in at times real harshness in the movie, but you've got to
Yeah.
go through that sometimes
Hmm.
to get
Yeah.
to where you need to get to. That's what I really like about those. So let's end this whole celebration with two non-English language movies. What's going on here? This is, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
little bit rare. It's a little bit
A little bit
rare
rare.
on It's a Wonderful Podcast, admittedly, but every so often we do like to throw something out there. So let's throw a German movie out there and let's throw a
Yes.
French movie out there, Janine, because M, Fritz Lang's M, 1931, shows up
Hmm.
as one of the most influential genre movies ever. I
Yeah.
think one of people call it the first serial killer movie, a real precursor to a great deal of personal, people-based horror movies, and a precursor to a lot of Fritz Lang's American noirs as well, because it's
Yeah.
very institutional evil, even though on the surface Peter Lorre is evil in the movie, but is he really evil? Because does he actually want to be killing these children? No,
Yes.
as we find out at the end of the movie,
Hmm.
he wants to get help. The system, the country, the people don't allow him to get help. They pigeonhole him into one thing, and it's this impossible philosophical question of who is right and who is wrong. Is it the person actually
Yes.
killing
Hmm.
children, or is it the people condemning the person who is killing the children, even though he doesn't actually want to? It's a compulsion. It's an illness within
Yes,
him.
is yes, it's really interesting delving into the concept of a perceived evil, bringing out the evil of the kind of people judging them.
Yeah,
It's a really great look into that, and I found myself finding really interesting comparisons between this movie and, like, modern horror films like A Nightmare on Elm Street and, Stepfather, and just interesting things that I noticed in those movies that immediately took me back to this film. And so kind of the reach this, non-American, thriller film had on things, you know, far into its future was just really interesting to kind of pick up on the great themes it was discussing, and kind of the chills that it gives you with this character, and the moral kind of quandaries that it has you really thinking about, and it leaves you sitting with that thought of kind of that
It
debate, which
does.
I think is really intelligent and a great introduction to a villain as well. So,
I mean, a
certainly,
great introduction for many people to Peter Lorre as well, who's
yes,
obviously
yes,
wonderful. But I think M is an incredibly accessible, older, non-English language movie as well.
yes,
Incredibly accessible.
hmm,
I think it's very, very easy to watch
yeah,
because it's like any other killer horror movie. It plays like that,
yeah,
very much so. It and with all these extra layers on it, though, that Lang obviously likes to bring into his movies, these ideas of down with the institutions of state and things like this. He didn't like Germany in the early 30s, Fritz Lang, for a reason. He came to America for a reason. I wonder why. We
yeah,
all know why. We don't have to
yeah,
get into history to the 20th
yes,
century here,
yeah,
but it's very interesting as a period in of time in German movies anyway, and Lang is the real father of that whole era, I
yes,
think. And M is, for my money, his best movie, or certainly the best movie I've seen of his, both
yeah,
German and American.
yeah,
So, yes.
definitely, yes.
Let's end with
Um,
magical romance, Jeannine.
yes, La Belle et la Bête, the French version of Beauty and the Beast. I talked about how, I tried to bring in my own little vibe on the show with my Deja Vu series, where we took classic films and then took a comparative look at its modern remake. And those kind of turned into retrospectives in some episodes where there was more than just a remake. There were several iterations over time of one story. So we did that with Zorro and Little Women. And so we had some great
Yeah.
retrospectives. And so we ended up doing that with Beauty and the Beast, not only looking at this French version, but the Disney animated version from the 90s and then that live action remake. So doing a retrospective episode, I think I wanted to have that as one of the films and generally episodes that encompassed what we do on this show. We're trying to push things and really show people the connections between old and new, and that we wouldn't have, the new. I keep saying that we wouldn't have any of what we have today without this great groundwork of films. So I wanted to have at least one episode and film that really spoke to the history and spoke to our show specifically of kind of the special episodes we do with these retrospectives. And this was probably one of
Okay.
my all-time favorite retrospectives, taking a look at, this early film and then just seeing how beautiful it was. And again, like A Stolen Life, a film showing kind of these early versions of special effects and special effects makeup and just, great visuals and great performances and just a beautiful telling of this fairy tale. And again, a little bit with, what I spoke about classic horror films really setting a tone and a vibe and really giving us a magical feeling that you wouldn't expect to get from a film made so many years ago. Um, so just a general great kind of look through film history with that episode, with starting with this great film. Um, very accessible for a film because I feel like, a non-English language films always have this reputation of being very inaccessible and, "Oh my gosh, I have to read subtitles," and, "Oh my gosh, da 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 da." But because this is such a well-known story, it's so easy to follow, it's so easy to kind of be romanced by the magic of the story and the sweeping nature of it and, the
Well, it's
really
primarily visual.
yes, and the great special effects that we're seeing because I was just so taken aback by, some of the things happening in this film. It was just
And say
absolutely
say what you
gorgeous.
want. Say what you want. The Beast in Beauty and the Beast has never looked better than he does in
No, he looks
1946.
yeah, he looks great. Um, and just a beautiful telling of that story, and great costuming, great sets, and, everything was just
It
really doing it pitch perfect in that film, and then to
it
kind of
is absolutely.
take a look at the later versions, was just a really interesting kind of walk through history. So yeah.
La Bella La Bette is absolutely one of the most beautiful movies
Mhm.
I've ever seen. Like, flat out. If
Yeah.
I'm talking about aesthetically, visually beautiful movies. Shane is up there.
Mhm.
Bella LaBette is up there
Yeah.
too. We've just kind of recently just brought up.
Yeah.
But it's again, it has that fairy tale uniqueness, like Night of the Hunter, one of my choices
Mhm.
there. But it is just a magical, magical movie. Far more magical than anything Disney could try and conjure up in later years. It is, because
Yeah.
Jean Cocteau is bringing a real surrealism to La Belle à la Bête that is so welcome, I
Yeah.
think, in that movie. And romantically, it just really envelops you as well.
Mhm.
The pure heartedness of it
Yes.
all. You feel so in love at the end of watching that movie, even though is it Jean Marie, his name, the actor who actually plays
I
the
think
Beast,
so.
looks like a complete buffoon at the end of that movie when he turns into his real self when he's
Yeah.
wearing that ridiculous outfit.
Oh my gosh,
But
yes.
it's that's beside the point. It is a wonderful movie, and you are right in saying it is definitely one of our best ever episodes of this show as well.
Yeah.
The Beauty and the Beast retrospective. Jeannine, I think that is going to do it for a big 300th episode celebration of It's a Wonderful Podcast. It's all been about threes today.
Yeah.
We've had a great deal of fun. Whew, that was an epic. That was like
Yes.
Ben-Hur the episode, and we've never covered Ben-Hur.
Yes, I mean, we
Or
could have gone 3 hours and made it a full
what's
3,
another
but
what's another stunningly long epic movie? I don't know.
Lawrence of
I'm blanking.
Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia. There you go. It's Lawrence of Arabia, and we've never covered Lawrence of Arabia either, which says that there are many, 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 many more movies we want to cover on this
Yes.
show. 300 is an awful lot of episodes of It's a Wonderful Podcast. I mentioned over 6 years is an awfully long time. I worked
Yes.
it out that 6 years, I worked it out, in fact, that over 20% of my life, I think about 23% of my life has been dedicated to It's a Wonderful
Oh my
Podcast,
gosh.
which is
6 years, that's
insane.
insane. That is incredibly insane.
It's nonsense. How has this happened? It's happened because we love old movies. We love
Yes.
celebrating old movies. We love discovering new old movies. And we thank you so much for listening to this episode, for watching this episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. If you are here watching, of course, and for constantly supporting, I mean, all our wonderful patrons that we love
Yes.
so dearly as well. We can't do what we do without their phenomenal support all the time. If you would like to join those, I mean, there's been a thing scrolling at the bottom if you are watching, but there are links in the description of this episode if you want to go and join the Patreon or donate in any way, support us in that sense on our continued journey into celebrating old movies. We aren't stopping anytime soon. Here's to the next 6 years and 6 years after that. Jeannine, why not?
Yay. Yes.
Why the hell not? But yes, I mean, it's not the only show we have on the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed, because Morgan Hasn't Seen is there, which also recently celebrated a milestone of 250
Yes.
episodes of Morgan Hasn't Seen. We do have a special video episode of that up as well for that milestone that is up on the YouTube channel. Subscribe, ding your notification bell on this YouTube channel, and subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts on all major podcast platforms. Of course, we are here every Wednesday and Friday with Morgan Hasn't Seen and this show. It's a Wonderful Podcast itself. We are going nowhere at all. You can also find us on social media, on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Find me on Twitter at the Purple Dom with a 3 instead of the E in there, because Jeannine said again.
3 is the magic number.
It certainly is today on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at The Purple Dawn. Jeannine, all your 3 loving stuff is where?
You can find me at Janine Devine _ on Twitter, Janine Devine on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, it has been scrolling below, but you can find the link in the description or search It's a Wonderful Podcast on teespring.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art in print form, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
There we go. I don't think there's anything left to say, is there? Is there? I don't know.
So.
There might be. I don't think there is, though. It's 300. Here's to the next 300.
Yes.
And the next 6 years. And the next 300 after that. And the next 6 years after that. Because there's so many more wonderful old movies we want to get into.
Yes.
And we're certainly going to do that. Onwards and upwards for 301 next week. And that's going to be a great episode as well, as I get to talk about the music of Isaac Hayes. Yay! Yes. Success. Jeannine, go ahead. Count us down in your very favourite impression today. 3, 2, 1, darling. She is behind me. Bye. Bye. Yeah.